So thanks everybody for coming in and joining. We're going to start to do some of these product webinars to get some updates out there, product releases, things that we don't typically talk about, and it's unique and specific to our customers and users. So appreciate everybody joining. I'm Chris Arredondo, co-founder and VP of Customer Success. Pretty much everything customer related here at Cargo Chief. I've got Kirk, our CTO, here to join us and talk about everything products. Kirk, you want to give a quick intro?
Hey, I'm Kirk Franzen, the CTO. And as I think Chris kind of summed it up, I'll talk through what's going on with the product here.
There we go. So, some of you may have already met Kirk. Usually spearheads our integration conversations and things like that. What I want to start off with is a little bit about what we're doing here at Cargo Chief, some things that are changing for the good to enhance your experience. Through our sort of the last 3 months or so, we've started to transform that onboarding process where some of you may have gone through it and some may haven't. What we do now in that customer success side is really kind of like taking a back door into the data side of things and really understanding your load to carrier ratios, your marquee customers. What does your margin look like? What outcomes do we expect? And trying to tie different things together, because a lot of times TMSs have reports that can say how many loads you have on the board, what your margin is, what your revenue is, but it doesn't really give you a kind of a look ahead. It's a lot of times you have to sort of interpret what you're given, and a lot of times that typically it's everyone sitting in a room reviewing a spreadsheet for a day, and then you go and carry on with the world. So how we sort of look at things these days is more from like a data quality review approach. I mean, I want to quickly show you guys what that looks like. And likely if you're not on an integrated TMS or haven't integrated yet, then you may not see some of this information, which is okay, because luckily we can still do it for you. What we look at usually in this process is your lane makeup and your marquee customers. Typically, it's going to be your bigger brands like Home Depot, Boston Beer, Nestle Water, somebody that represents the majority of your volume. And typically when you ask, who's my marquee customer, what does that account to carrier relationship look like? Usually it's a pretty dialed in approach. Usually it's like, you're moving 200 loads a month with a very solid set of carriers. Maybe it's about 30 or 50 core carriers that are taking the majority of that volume. What we look at now as we roll out our integrations with customers is we start to look at their other freight mix that they've got. Typically, it's like the other 95% of your customers often have a load to carrier ratio that looks something like this, where it's 200 loads to 200 different carriers every single time. And what some of our integrations help with is that carrier retention, carrier reuse, and really asset utilization. So what we start to uncover here is these accounts that you may have that have a 1-to-1 ratio, meaning one load for every new carrier. That's where we can really start to help you guys out to change that relationship, because it's not a secret. I think, we talked to some of our customers that have expressed that the next 6 months and looking into 24 is going to be more about increasing throughput and doing more with what you've got. And that's sort of how we take this approach, where it's not, you have the C4 application. Sometimes it's just that data step to help get you to where you need to be to help move that needle. So through this process, we look at your load to carrier ratios. We help you identify your asset utilization. Sometimes you might have a carrier that's doing, 5 loads a month with you, but that carrier might have 50 trucks and 100 lanes. So our goal is to try to help you guys do more business with those current carriers. That way they're not, kind of going somewhere else, and keeping that core group of brokers and shippers that they want to work with and making it a frictionless experience. So some of that is part of what we do in that onboarding process now. So I'm going to launch this poll here for anyone that wants to sort of talk about that with your CSM, your customer success manager. Happy to get that call on the books for you guys. So I'll go ahead and launch that. And if you can answer that poll, if you'd like to, we can get something scheduled for you and take a look at your data and help you kind of build your business there in a different approach. So as that's getting it launched, you can answer. It'll be anonymous. We're not going to share that with anybody, so we'll go ahead and carry through with that. And at this time, I'm going to stop sharing and pass the ball to Kirk to talk about product updates and releases, what's on the roadmap, and open it up at the end for any questions that anybody has.
Cool. Thanks, Chris. Right. Let's see.
Should be able to share now. I think I
get myself set up here. Right. Everybody should be seeing my screen.
Yep.
So quickly gonna run through some new things that we've rolled out here in the last month or so. You know, we've just launched the ability to handle companies that have an agency model or even just multiple offices. And what that really looks like is during onboarding, Chris and his team can configure your account in such a way that there are some users who can sort of see all of your information and other users who can only see the information that they need to see. This is most obvious when you're looking at the scorecards. So normally, this is kind of what our scorecard menu looks like. And when you view scorecards, just like what Chris was just showing you, you're seeing a complete view, including customer information. If you have your account set up as an agency model, and you're not a user that gets to see customer information, if you're only working capacity, if you're only seeing lanes, if you're only seeing the carriers that you work with, you can still see this scorecard, which will show you overall how you're doing, but you can't see any of the customer information. And as we set people up, if there are other data points that they want to hide or show, that's stuff that we'll be adding into this as we go forward. And so again, this is really something Chris and his team can set up during onboarding or configuration, or if you're already set up and you want to get some of this functionality, they can turn it on for you. We've also just announced we're now handling box and sprinter capacity. So you should see box trucks. If you could scroll down in this list, you would also see sprinters. You can search for it under capacity. You can also, use this in the booking assistant automation. If you send through loads for box or sprinter, we'll map those to your network and reach out to those carriers for you. And as we see loads get booked, we'll be updating your network and expanding your network with that capacity as the system processes your data. Few other things here around, booking assistant and DFM. We've also started a beta for doing partial freight. And so this is going to be anytime you're sending stuff through that's 6 pallets, 10 pallets, it's a smaller amount of weight, but it's going to require a full truck. The system is going to recognize that, and it's only going to reach out to carriers that we know take partial freight, and it's also going to communicate to them when we reach out to them that it's a partial load. This is not generally available in the platform. We're working on it with a few customers first. If it's something that you're interested in, probably should have had Chris set up a poll for this along the way, but we can just reach out to Chris or your customer success representative and ask if you can get access. And it's pretty much we just want to make sure that people know it's still a work in progress. It's not perfect yet, so we don't want to just open it up sort of generally. You may or may not have noticed, if you're using the booking assistant, we've made quite a few improvements in the last month. We've seen our average carrier outreach per load jump by, in some cases 20 or 30 carriers more per load that we're matching. We made a few changes to the way we were scoring carriers and also to the number of carriers that we could pull in and group together, sort of some back-end performance improvements. But the result is that we're matching a lot more carriers and putting those loads in front of a lot more carriers. We've also made just generally available If you want to send out some or all of your loads with no rates, you can do that. This is, again, it's something you'd need to reach out to Chris's team. They can just turn it on your account, and that will work in conjunction with whatever other rating you have. So if you're already sending a rate on most of your loads, if you're using the C4 rates, and for some reason C4 can't produce a rate, like for example, box and sprinter trucks right now, we're not doing rating of those. We're working on the capacity side of that, but we don't have pricing for those loads yet. So if you send those through, we can send those out without a rate and try to get carriers to send rates back into you for those. And then the last and maybe the biggest thing is sort of general availability for the Book Now feature. And right now, this is only available for some of our TMSs. Right now, it's available for McLeod, Logistically, and 3PL systems. Here in September, we'll be rolling that out for Turbo. And I think probably in October, we'll be rolling this out with Thai. For Thai customers. And what this means is if you go, or if you ask your customer success team member to go into your Book Now configurations, you can come in and there will be a section here for configuring Book Now. And you can turn it on. And if you click this box, then all of your loads will be treated as Book Now loads. And that means that if you send through a rate, or if we put a C4 rate on the load, the carrier is going to get a button that allows them to book it for that rate. And if they say, yes, they have it, we will automatically assign the load to the carrier in the TMS for you. So instead of putting an offer into the TMS, we'll go ahead and assign the carrier to the load, which will trigger whatever workflow you have set up in your TMS. I know some of the TMSs, as soon as a carrier gets assigned, it can automatically send a rate con, or it notifies the proper team member. That'll all happen inside the TMS. If you only want to do that for certain carriers, certain customers, certain revenue codes, you can come in here and you can configure this so that the Book Now will only trigger on specific loads, or maybe it triggers on all your loads, but only for, a group of your preferred carriers, right? So maybe you really like Voyager, and I picked one that I can't pronounce, Vyacheslav trucking there. But so now if we save this rule, anytime those carriers are a match, they will get the opportunity to go ahead and book the load. Any other carriers that are a match will get the normal carrier offer workflow, where they'll still be able to respond to the load and book the load, or respond to the load and make an offer on the load, but they won't be able to automatically book it. Only these carriers would be able to automatically book it. So that's really it for the Book Now. It's just a few rules here. You can turn it on and off. And if you have questions, if you have questions about that, you can either come to this screen yourself if you have admin access to the app, or you can set up time with Chris and his team to work through getting this set up.
Yeah. Just to chime in there real quick. The Book Now piece, usually what we see is that, like, you probably have carriers that run these lanes very often for you, and often it's the way that people are traditionally communicating with them is phone call or an email, just to know that they're going to send them that load anyways. So when you talk about like your relationship between you and the carrier, making it more frictionless for them, to where like all they have to do now is click this button and get assigned the load and trigger the rate con out to them, that starts to position your team and the way that you guys communicate with your carriers differently. Because now when you remove all the legwork from the tasks to send a load to a carrier that's inevitably going to get it anyways, now you can start to focus on meaningful conversations that go beyond just like, hey, do you have a truck? No. Okay, well, I'll call you next time I get a load. Where now it's more like, hey, I noticed, in C4, it looks like you guys, I don't know, have 200 trucks, you have about 800 lanes, and I want to try to do more business with you, Voyager, whichever carrier that is, because at the end of the day, like when it comes to load boards and stuff, carriers too, sometimes there's going to be a gap or a void in that relationship. If you're posting a load out on a load board and one of your carriers can take that lane, why didn't anyone call that carrier, right? It's usually bandwidth, or it's usually visibility into freight between your TMS and your carrier. So like when we position some of these book now options, it's a really good place to start, even just to like in your mind think about which carriers would I think would be a good fit for this particular action, because not every carrier is going to be the best carrier for it, but we're here to help you guys have that conversation too with your carriers if there's a way that we can help them out to keep them coming back to you. So just want to add that in there, Kirk.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I'm gonna just cancel this so I make sure and not make any changes. So moving on from running the booking assistant into providing you guys with some insight into what the booking assistant is doing for you. So we've launched a dashboard here that is going to show you what things look like. So when you load this up, you will be able to see, how often we're running the booking assistant on your loads, and it will sometimes be for some customers it's more than 100%. What that usually is telling us is that loads are coming up and for whatever reason they're going out and not getting booked, and we're running them more than once through the system. You can see how often carriers are engaging with the emails that we're sending them. And then down here, you can see details of, exactly how many carriers are being emailed, how often those emails are being opened. And then finally, how many of your loads are getting booked with these carriers that we're communicating with. So exactly like what you're going to see in the billing that we send you. So you'll be able to, you'll still get the billing at the beginning of each month, but you'll be able to see this as the month is progressing, what's going on and what loads we've helped you book. It updates, that data will update once a day. So you don't need to be going and looking at it all day, every day, but it'll update sort of first thing in the morning pretty early. And then you can, see what's going on basically up through that time. We'll be rolling that out here throughout the rest of the year. So Chris and his team will be reaching out. We'll be getting that set up. There's a little bit of a setup to get access to we're using Tableau for this. So we got to get some accounts set up and give people access to it. And that kind of covers what's new in the product as of today. Chris, I didn't know if you wanted to go over anything before we start talking about the future.
Yeah. So some of the, the dashboard information that we give, we track everything pretty much that happens as soon as that load gets built, everything beyond, and even the engagement with the carriers, where a load gets sent out, the booking assistant rate, we call it kind of like a run rate, roughly 100% of the time. I think most customers are probably 70 to 80% of the time, but ideally everything goes through automation. And what happens is like the number of new carriers you start to add goes down and the number of carriers you reuse goes up. And when you make that shift, you start to get this sort of like a pipeline or funnel of activity. Your open rates are going to start to go to roughly 50 to 60%, where roughly 60% of the time your carriers are opening your emails. A lot of times there's not really much software out there that tracks that open rate, reply rate, click rate, book rate, but we do it all for you. And that's really the good thing about the dashboard view, to where you can see what your reply rates are. It's roughly 40 to 50% of the time, meaning that at least half of your freight is getting replied to from carriers, where traditionally you probably have no idea what that is if you're just sending one-off emails to carriers. So if you have kind of like a trend in what to look at, that always comes down to your option rate. And that's really what we push when it becomes carrier offers coming straight to your TMS, or when carriers actually book that load with you. It's really about an option. If you don't have an option, then the worst thing that can happen is that load gets rolled, or your customer service is at risk. So roughly, I think it's like 30% of the time is what we try to shoot for an outcome for carrier offers coming in and getting loads booked. So it's a really good way to see where you are, and making sure that you guys are on the path to success that we have with our other customers, making sure it does fit those KPIs and metrics. So it's definitely something to look at if you are running the automation and matching. Kirk, back to you.
Now let's start talking about some things that we have coming here in the next few months and quarters. I alluded earlier, we are about to be live with Turbo this month. Any of you who are on Turbo and have been waiting will be, reaching out in October, starting to work on turning those integrations on. So that's exciting if you're a Turbo customer. A big one that we've added is we've started to integrate with some carrier-focused TMSs. And what this is going to do, LoadOps is going to be probably our first partner on this, is instead of relying purely on those emails, the dispatcher at the carrier will be able to see here in the TMS all of the loads that they're a match for. So what's going to happen is down here, they're going to show any loads that you have that are a match for this carrier. They would show up here, hey, this is a fit right in here. And we think this is going to really drive, a much bigger increase in engagement with these loads as these people are able to start looking at it, in the tool that they're using. So said LoadOps is going to be the first, and then we have a few other carrier-focused TMSs that we're starting to work with as well. So we're pretty excited about that. To get a little more engagement and a little more traction with these carriers, kind of where they live. We're going to be, everybody's got their own AI going these days, and one of the new places that we're deploying a little bit of AI is, a lot of times carriers are not clicking the button, but are just responding back with yes or sure, I'll do it for $900. We've been, working on parsing those emails and recognizing when that email is an offer or when that is an email as a carrier accepting a load, and we'll be starting to basically automatically sort of intercept that communication and go ahead and stick it in the TMS for you. The email will still show up in your inbox, just we're not going to interrupt the conversation with the carrier, but the idea is that hopefully we can sort of reduce that, again, just to reduce a little bit of that manual task where if you get an email and then you have to go enter it in the TMS, oh, this is an offer or this carrier needs to be assigned, the system is going to start doing that for you. And I think this is something, don't have quite have a firm date on it yet. We're going to, sort of roll this out slowly and be sort of watching how it performs on our side before we start, turning it loose and letting it update offers and loads. So we'll have updates on that as we move forward with it. But we think it's going to be, really increasing the amount of times that you're getting offers into the TMS to work with instead of having to go back and forth to your inbox, which is really the goal, right? So we're pretty excited about that. We're going to be adding some new pricing options. We're doing an integration with green screens for any of you that happen to be green screens customers. What I'm showing here is if you turn on green screens, you'll have the option to see their rating information and their network prediction inside of C4. Also, if you're a booking assistant customer, that will now be an option for pricing your loads in the automation workflow. Just like you can use the C4 rate or whatever rate you send through from the TMS if you want, you can turn it on and you can use your green screens buy rate as the rate that we go out to with carriers. So that integration we're actively working on it, and I'm hopeful that it's going to be live in October. So that one's pretty exciting as well. A big one that we've heard from a few of you, actually, I don't know if you're on the phone, but quite a few of you have mentioned that some of your carriers get overwhelmed when you're working on a project that comes in from a customer and you're entering 5, 10, 20 loads all at once from the same customer, and we're reaching out to those carriers sort of rapid fire. So we are going to build in some handling for that sort of freight. It won't really change how you are working on things, but what effectively we're going to be doing is looking for, hey, if we start seeing a lot of load notifications in a row for the same lane or the same customer, we'll start batching those up and we'll reach out to the matching carriers with sort of all of those loads. And so what will happen is really just configuration. Another one, I get broken record. You'll be able to talk with Chris and his team about how you want to configure this, but you can basically think of it as normally what we've heard is an account manager or operations person is in there. They get an email with all these loads from a customer and they sort of set them all up in the TMS all at one time. So we'll be saying, hey, if you see 10, 20 multiple loads from a customer all within, say, a 20-minute time period, we'll batch those up. And instead of blasting them out to the carriers one at a time, we'll send the carrier one email with all of the loads that you have for that customer, and then they'll be able to respond back just like they would for any individual load. So we think that's going to, ease a little bit of that friction where some of the carriers are feeling like we're sort of overwhelming them with a whole bunch of load emails, just one after the other. Sticking with the theme of sort of controlling the DFM a little more, another thing that we've heard a lot about is the need to do a waterfall approach where not all the carriers are getting that load all at once. And so we're going to be doing this in a few stages. The first thing that you're going to see is inside of our projects, we're going to be adding another step where if you have carriers that you're talking to about the project, but you haven't actually procured them, you're not ready for them to start participating in that project, you can sort of label them in this other group. And there will be some actions to allow you to move carriers back and forth from recommended to engaged, from engaged to procured, and vice versa. So that's going to be sort of the first step to making pulling the projects in and using the projects in conjunction with the booking assistant. So basically, when we get a load, we'll be looking to see if there's a project set up for that lane or that customer. And then we'll be using the configuration inside the project to control how we communicate with the carriers. The next step would be, once you have some carriers procured, you can start to group them. And I really hope to get some feedback if you guys are seeing this and thinking this is really not usable or this is great. This is all brand new. We're just sort of still spitballing how we're going to make this UI work. But the idea here is that you have a list of procured carriers. You'll be able to come under actions and sort of, select 3 or 5 or 10 and create a group. And then for that group, you'll be able to say, these are the ones I want you to contact as soon as the load goes live. Here's another group that I want you to contact 10 minutes later if that load is still open. Contact this next group, which should not be the same name. Contact them 30 minutes later. And so you'll have options here for setting delays, basically. What this is also going to allow you to do is if you have lanes where you have 1 carrier or 3 carriers that are always running that freight for you, set up 1 group of carriers and we won't email anybody else, right? So this will help you to streamline some of that dedicated freight, which a lot of folks don't like to push through because we're broadcasting it out to too many carriers. But now we'll have the ability to come in here and say, hey, I just want these 3 carriers or this 1 carrier to receive these loads. Again, what will happen is when we get those loads, the system will match it up and say, oh, there's a project configured for this. let's use those settings. And if it's only, if it's a dedicated project, only email these carriers that we have set up. So that's really what we're thinking about in terms of both setting up a waterfall and also handling those dedicated lanes where you already know the carriers and you just really want to sort of streamline it and make one workflow for all your carriers and all your loads. And this is just a little, so once that's set up, you'd be able to see the carriers in each group. You could expand this, collapse this, and you can see the other carriers in the group. Really love to hear any thoughts or feedback if you have, ways that you do this now or things that you think would be really important. Like I said, this is something that we're just getting started with, and so we're definitely interested. If you want, I'd love to get on the phone with you and talk through your workflow for this. Make sure that we're building something that works for everybody here. And then there's just one more piece, which we're going to be starting to work on. We have, we've been hearing that as people are starting to use C4 more and more, they often have carriers that they've procured through projects, or they've just come in and set up in C4. Maybe they're not even fully onboarded in their TMS. And so we're going to start working with some of our TMS partners to streamline that process so that if you do get an offer or engagement from a carrier that's not already set up with you, we can help get that carrier set up without your team having to do something. And what that's going to look like generally is if a carrier replies back or submits an offer, we're going to communicate to the carrier automatically, hey, you need to first get set up with so-and-so before we can put this offer into the system, and we'll send them whatever onboarding link you have, whether you're using my carrier packets, that would be first. But if you're using another solution like Highway or RMIS, hopefully we can get that set up to where you can send those links out. The carrier can get onboarded, and as soon as we see that update, we can go ahead and feed that carrier offer back into your system. And so again, it's really, we're just trying to reduce all the sort of legwork and repetitive stuff that your teams are having to do as these loads are flowing through the system. I think that is all that I have.
Yeah, so did we I don't think we shared the new projects layout.
Oh yeah, that's true. Just the general layout. So Chris, did you want to describe this or
so right, so most of you, I believe, should have access to this. If for some reason it's an unsupported or outdated subscription, we can talk to you about how to get access to this. But the idea here is more like we've heard different ways that people want to use projects, like in different stages, like Kirk has there, sort of like a pipeline, like something that's been awarded, something that's live, or something that's new. You can also think of it as even if it's a stage of a certain bid, like if it's, I don't know, if you have Walmart bids and you want to group this by your specific customer name, you can group all of these just like that. And I think as we roll into more of the projects interacting with your actual freight that you have on your board, I think this is going to help you organize a little bit better. Kirk is showing you sort of like your filters that you can break this into, whether it's customer name, dates, states. If you want to look at all of your Houston, Texas outbound freight, you can categorize this pretty much however you want to. And that's really kind of something we rolled out, like maybe 45 days ago or so, about a month and a half.
Yeah, probably actually towards the end of July, I would say, but something like that.
Yeah. And it's, projects came to us actually, for those that don't know, it started at the turn of COVID. People were trying to find a way to replace their lost revenue. And they were coming here to build out new opportunities. So maybe you have opportunities that you had in the past, and you want to come back and try to find carriers so you can go back to your customers and say, like, hey, I've got this group of carriers now at a certain rate. Do you still have this freight, or what kind of rate can we work with? And that's a really good way to start to expand your revenue, and just a really good way to interact with in more organized fashion rather than just Excel. And I'm going to launch this poll here, talking about projects, for some of you that might have used it or haven't used it, or even what we're talking about, what Kirk was talking about earlier with the priority in your waterfall tendering. Just let us know if if you like the new layout of projects, if you love it, if you think it needs improvement, or you hate it. Let us know. We're always open to change and putting out what works. So I'll leave that poll open for a little bit. Kirk, there was a question that came in regarding the green screens integration. I'm not sure. I think green screens has an application too where users can log into it, but then on our side on C4 where people can log into it and see the green screens rate. The question was, when we integrate with green screens, are they going to be able to see both C4 rates and green screens rates, sort of to have 2 points of reference? Like in C4, is it going to show both of those rate?
Yeah, absolutely. So we will, what I was showing here, but we'll have some options here around what you can see once you turn that green screens rates on. So if you want to see both rates, we'll show you the green screens rate and the current rate, and the recent transactions might be hidden. We'll have a few configurations, and again, that's pretty new. If you have some suggestions or thoughts, we're going to send, I think we'll send out a recording of this. So we'd love to hear, what information is valuable up there, what information is not valuable. The other part of the green screens integration that I can't show you because I don't have access to their app is they are rolling out a capacity feature, and this capacity is going to be, if you're a Cargo Chief customer, just like you can see your green screens rate in our app, if you prefer their app, you'll be able to see your capacity in their application under that new capacity tab that they're showing. So the data will be flowing both ways, depending on which app you prefer to use. But yeah, absolutely, we will have an option where you can sort of see both rates here.
Awesome. Trying to think. I don't think there's too many other questions here that we haven't already kind of addressed. I think some highlights that we had with Cargo Chief. We onboarded somebody in this new process. I think last month was our second month fully integrated, and they booked roughly 200 loads in that second month. I think their first month they did like 150 loads booked through C4. So we can turn these around pretty quickly. It's just about being as candid as we can with each other, because if you guys want it to work, we're going to make it work, and that just drives a better network for everybody. All these these updates that are coming out, I really excited about the waterfall and the email routing. I think a lot of you that are integrated, you probably get those emails where carriers are like, I can do it next week or 1,500, and there's not really a tangible offer that goes to your TMS, and that's what's going to start to happen, where if a carrier says 1,500, that'll start to get logged right in your TMS, or if it's yes, I can do it, that'll start to get logged as an offer, and that starts to cut down on some of that legwork too with your team. So just thinking about, if you're not integrated right now, think about over the next couple of weeks, or you may already have examples from last week that if you thought about, man, it would be really nice to have a better solution to what we're doing, there's probably an opportunity there for you that we can help work with you. That's pretty much it. For some upcoming things, we're going to start to do this roughly every month. Just announce some of the things that we have on the roadmap that got released, maybe some upcoming changes. So if any of you guys have any feature requests or things, we do listen, and it'll get on the roadmap, and we'll definitely talk about it on our next call. We're going to be out at a couple conferences here coming up. We've got the McLeod conference, so if anyone is McLeod user, come on by. We'll be there. Kirk will be there. to talk shop and do whatever you want. So it's gonna be a good time. Then we've got the 3PL Systems Conference. Kirk is going to be there, so if anyone's on brokerware, then we've got the TIA Technovations show. So that will be in I think that one's in San Diego. But we'll be out and about. So if we're coming around to your area, reach out, let us know, and maybe we can meet up while we're at one of these conferences. So there's that. I think that's about it. Kirk, anything else on your side?
I think that's it, unless there's any more. Let's see, do we just get we think
got another one. There you go. So when running a bid project for customers, we'll be able to show green screens and C4 rates when they receive the file back.
when you're uploading, like using the RFP tool, yes, well, let's see. I will have to talk to the green screens folks a little. I don't think there's a reason we can't do that, but I will definitely have to follow up on that one. That's a good suggestion though.
Yeah, I think we've there's some other options that we've seen before that have like it kind of like maps out whatever rating engine you have, and that'd be a pretty good thing there. So great feature suggestion there.
Yeah. Thank you.
Definitely. That's the stuff we look for. So, all right, guys. Well, I appreciate everyone for sticking with us during that delay earlier as we got started here, but looking forward to everything. And if you haven't joined our user group on LinkedIn, we'll try to push that out to you and join us to catch up on other updates and everything Cargo Chief. So wishing everyone a good rest of your week and have a great week.
Thanks, everybody. Have a good one.